legal cannabis industry has unlocked generational wealth opportunities across the country. But the industry's regulatory complexities, constant state of change, and speed of evolution drive confusion for entrepreneurs and investors alike. On this podcast, we'll interview the industry leaders who are shaping the future of the legal cannabis industry to help our listeners understand these idiosyncrasies. This is Cannabis Unlocked, hosted by Key Investment Partners. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Cannabis Unlocked. I'm your host today, Jordan Youkilis with Key Investment Partners, and today I'm very excited to be joined by Brandon Johnson, the CEO and co-founder of TRP. Brandon, how are you doing today?
Doing fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining. And so to kick things off, would love if you could first let people know, what does TRP stand for? What is that company? And then let's talk a little bit about your personal background.
Sure. TRP is a brand agnostic platform that has scaled our cannabis infrastructure licensing framework nationally. We started in California and have grown to a footprint in 14 states. I think we're operational in 9 or 10 of those, and the rest are in some stage of development. I think what's been important to us is that we understand the value and the importance of legacy and heritage brands and what they mean to cannabis culture and what culture means to cannabis consumers. At the end of the day, California legalized kind of the earliest, and so you've had the longevity in this marketplace. And then places like Colorado and Washington came around pretty quickly. And that's where I think you're seeing a lot of legacy operators who were growing in at the time it was the black market, and now it's the gray market or the illegitimate, legacy markets, whatever you want to call it. You have a licensing framework that has brought people into this that don't understand the 25-year history of people having risked their lives to go to prison, who actually created and found genetics and were doing the strain crosses and have lived that life. And I think that while we don't pretend and profess to be legacy operators, and we don't want to, appropriate that, it's something that we understand and we appreciate and we respect. And on the flip side, TRP also stands for a business that can be a reliable partner to institutional investors and sit and bridge the gap between legacy operators and national MSOs, because there's a lot of room in between the two. And I think that a successful business is going to have to be able to be both. Scaling a cannabis business is really hard. It's really expensive. You're setting up businesses in 12, 15, 20 different markets, different supply chains. And you can't do that without incredible access to capital, without, experienced operators that have scaled big businesses and multi-unit retail and cultivation distribution. But you also can't do it without understanding the legacy products and people who have been in this industry, because that's what consumers are used to. It's what they want, and it's what they're going to continue to want. So that's really what TRP is founded on, is the thesis that we can do both, versus there's a lot of guys doing one or the other.
Yep. Well, that's really well said. And I think it'll be helpful for folks to dive a little bit further into what exactly the TRP business model is, because it is certainly a bit complicated and unique. But before we get into that, would love to just learn a little bit more about your personal background. What was your career before cannabis, and how did you decide to get into the cannabis industry?
I'm a real estate guy by trade. I've been doing land use entitlement real estate development in Southern California for about 20 years. And I got into the cannabis space originally as an investor, just on the personal level, started investing with various folks in kind of 2015, 2014, 2016. And I think to varying degrees had an expensive lesson where, you're going through the undulations and trials and tribulations and seeing the evolving nature of the licensing world, the legal world, where 2015, 16, the DEA was still raiding people. I mean, it's not like it is today where you're fairly insulated from those things. And so started investing, and that's where really got into the weeds and understanding the businesses, and then ultimately saw a lot of the things that were problems and challenges that they were facing, and realized that one of the things that we could do could help that business, which was going out and being a good operator, working well with the community to engage, and ultimately get licenses, because back 2018-19, licenses were few and far between. A lot of states hadn't opened up, or cities hadn't opened up, and that process was pretty competitive and pretty challenging to navigate. And our background in real estate entitlements really helped us launch into it, because it's kind of the same thesis, whether you're getting approvals from a city perspective, whether it's a cannabis business permit or a building permit in the California coastal zone. It's still a matter of showing the community why you're going to do good, how you're going to be a good operator, why this is good for them, not just good for you. And so we translated our 20-year history in development into cannabis. I think that from there, we ultimately built a pretty strong portfolio as a single state operator of licenses. And so we build them out, we design them, build them, and then built an operating company in order to run those stores, and then gravitated outside of California. You have some success here, and next thing you know, you're going to Colorado or you're going to Massachusetts. And then we have gone into the Florida market as well, which is a mandatory vertical. And so our operating platform at this point is seed to sale, and not in every market it's going to be hit and miss, but I think we've built a best-in-class cultivation, manufacturing, operations team, and doing so by working with cultivators that have been growing for 20 plus years. And how can we provide some of our insights in terms of building systems and scaling things, and really supplementing what they already know how to do, which is 20 years of trial and error of learning how to extract and do something in a certain way, or treat the plants. And then, providing resources and capital that I don't know if every legacy operator would be able to gain access to. And that's not something I'm pleased with, but it is the reality of the world. Is, the big MSOs have access to capital, and then there's everybody else. And there's no SBA loans yet, because government isn't working for it. So that's my background. And that's how we built the business. And my partners as well come from, one is an attorney, practice kind of joint ventures, capital financing, other things. And the other is a real estate guy who had done national rollouts for major tenants on the retail front. And so our three backgrounds, between understanding compliance and regulations and capital markets, mine in jurisdictional stuff, and a third partner with rolling out retail experiences, was a pretty good fit. I would say that all of us also have, a strong understanding of cannabis, and some of us have been in the business in various formats going back a long time. Not myself, but our team. We have just as many guys that have been in the game for 20 years as we do that migrated from Fortune 500 retailers, because we need to have.
Great. Well, thanks, Brandon. That's really helpful background. And I want to dive a little bit further into talking about some of the social equity licensures that have gone, through the states, and how there have been a number of problems with actually getting those types of businesses up and running. What you're talking about is you usually talk about bridging kind of the legacy market with institutional capital, right? Because as you point out, right, the reality is, while it might be great to have regulatory initiatives that are saying, hey, let's get licenses in the hands of the folks who have been imprisoned or disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. But again, the reality is those individuals are not going to necessarily have access to millions of dollars of capital to get a dispensary up and running. If they did have that access, they don't necessarily have the business skills to know how to run a profitable business. And so figuring out how to actually bridge the gap between what the regulations are intended to do and actually effectuating licenses and locations that do so has been a significant challenge for the industry. And so I think it's really great, the model that you and the team have developed. So maybe you can talk a little bit more about how that works.
I think that social equity is a term that has been, means different things to different people. I think at its core, the goals across just about every jurisdiction is, how do we make sure that the people that were harmed and the communities that were harmed by the war on drugs are now being lifted and given opportunities by the legalization or decriminalization, I guess, of cannabis and drugs in general. And I think that if you really double clicked on that, the minority communities were absolutely destroyed by the war on drugs. And that's something that I've sat on panels and said that every one of us should be ashamed and continue to be ashamed for what that meant. Because, there's some pretty incredible statistics of your probability of having been convicted of a crime. And you can isolate for income, age, education, every single thing, and just narrow it down to one person's white and the other's black. And the incidence of imprisonment and incarceration is exponentially higher. And that's something that we as a society need to acknowledge and fix. And I don't know anybody that really disagrees with that. I guess there are out there.
Yeah.
I think where you get into some challenges is regulators then try and create legislation to fix it. And the legislation is, while well-intended, doesn't always work. And I think that you see there's some abusive kind of predatory situations where it's social equity in name only. There really isn't any economic benefits, or scenarios where you have an entire community that was ravaged by the war on drugs, and you're going to make 10 people really successful. But what are you really doing for that community? And so I think every state is doing their best, or every city, and they're coming up with policies. We have tried very hard to engage and embrace what each jurisdiction's intent of social equity is, both in terms of an economic framework, but also if the idea is to try and give people career opportunities and growth, then how can we actually work with our local partners who want to grow in that industry? How can we train them? But how can we set them up for success? Running a cannabis dispensary or cannabis cultivation facility, I would argue, is one of the hardest jobs in the world, because it's the most regulated industry in the world. It's the most taxed industry in the world. It's a cash only business. So you don't have banking. The simple act of, swiping a credit card to buy a sandwich is 1,000 times more complicated because one of them is cannabis. Okay, you pay cash. Where'd you get that cash? How do I deposit the cash? How do I do the accounting for it? And so we try and supplement the pieces and then work with our social equity partners and say, what do you want to do? Do you want to be a hands-on operator? Do you want to be in the cultivation room, or do you want to be more of a, management, or do you want to be something else? And some of them might even want to actually say, I want to be a passive investor, you run with it. In our case, we really try and identify what they want to do. And we will bring all of the expertise that they don't want to bring and try and set them up for success. Our goal, and we've actually tried to do this in a couple of jurisdictions, is to be able to scale social equity outside of our ecosystem. Right now, we're constrained by the ability for us to go do a deal with a partner and grow that. But I think that it would be fantastic if the cannabis industry could actually create some set-aside funds to actually then invest where people don't have capital, right? Why they don't necessarily need us. And I think New York is actually kind of doing something similar. They're creating a fund in order to help launch it. But you've got these kind of weird consequences. In Massachusetts, as an example, or San Francisco, I'll use San Francisco as an example. If you're a social equity license and you're the social equity applicant, you can't actually sell your ownership. There's restrictions on sales, which I think was policy created because they didn't want predatory people to say, I'll buy you for $1 or buy you for $2. The problem, though, is, you might be 3-4 years into something, you've put your blood, sweat, and tears, and you want an exit, right? We're not all looking to run a business till the day we die. There's no ability to create exits. There's no ability to say, I have a child that's going to college, or I want to buy a house. How can I take chips off the table? So I think that the policies we're creating, they were one-step thought processes, and I think we need to start thinking 3 and 4 steps down the road to actually make it so that people can capitalize off of their investment into themselves, into their businesses. And I think that most cannabis companies are very supportive and embracive of social equity, and I think that's a good thing. 3 years ago, I think people viewed it as a means to an end. It was, okay, I need to find somebody who checks these 3 boxes so that I can apply. And we were probably guilty of that too. We didn't really understand what it meant. And now it's about finding the right individual who's deserving, who can help bridge the gap between legacy and regulated, who maybe was involved in gangs and now is transitioned to helping people. there's just so many ways that social equity can impact the negative aspects of the war on drugs beyond just here, you live in this zip code and you had below a certain economic means, you get 51% of this and we'll mail you a check. There's more that we've done, and we've tried to embrace that.
Yep. Wow. Well, that's really well said, Brandon. And, I think you guys are a prime example of how businesses in cannabis can do well by doing good. And that was certainly, one of the things that helped attract us to the investment and key investment partners when we invested in your latest round. And so, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the brands that you're working with today. And, for folks who maybe aren't familiar with either Cookies or Dr. Green Thumb, maybe some background on both of those brands and why you felt that those were the first two that you wanted to launch the business model with.
I think both of them check the most important box, which is legacy authenticity. I think that for those that don't know the stories behind those brands, I'll give you kind of 1 minute on it, but Cookies stems from the creation of the original Girl Scout cookies genetics, which was, created in a garage in San Francisco in the early 2000s. Berner and Jai, who have been in the legacy business for a long time, running shops and cultivating and creating new strains. Ultimately, that became kind of iconic. It was very, very well received. It created a flavor profile and a terpene profile that hadn't really been seen. And now, you look at around the streets and there's all, gelato and just about anything that sounds like a candy or dessert probably has some roots from the GSC strain. And then Dr. Green Thumb on the other side, anybody who grew up in a child of the 80s or the 90s remembers what Cypress Hill meant and what they were preaching about legalization of cannabis back when you literally went to prison for smoking weed. There's plenty of stories of people that were drug dealers going to prison, but you got caught smoking a joint and you could go to jail. And yet they lit up in the middle of SNL in the early 90s and were championing for the legalization of cannabis and really pushed this movement. And I think that both mean a lot in terms of, a 20-year history. And for us, we're not brand guys. We're not brand forward. We're not trying to ever make up a name and come up with some new brand and build that. I think that would be disrespectful to the people who have been fighting this fight for so long. I think what we bring to the party is the ability to fill in gaps. And in the case of Cookies, who we really originally launched the business with, they had arguably the best brand in the cannabis space, certainly most known, probably the only one that's kind of converted into a lifestyle brand. And Berner is somewhat of an iconic figure around the world. People tattoo Cookies on their arms. It's different. It's just different when you see it. And it was an incredible opportunity where you see the passion behind the lifestyle brand and what it means and the incredible focus on genetics. And then what do we do best? Well, how can you help scale that nationally and make sure that other markets and other people can get access to good medicine or good products? It's the ability to source licenses, operationalize them, create consistency of products, and continue to scale that. And I think that we've had a wonderful partnership with them that we continue to lean into. It's an exclusive relationship. And so we go to just about every new market, and our goal is to open Cookie stores in all of those. And they have been continue to push the movement forward from a genetics perspective. Berner was on the cover of Forbes. That's a big deal. It's a cannabis company in a non-cannabis magazine. And then, on the Dr. Green Thumb side, I think that you've got this LA culture that means so much dating back even longer than Cookies. I was 10 when Cypress Hill came out. I actually think the first time I ever saw cannabis, it was in a car listening to Cypress Hill. That LA kind of street culture and what it means to the legacy cannabis community, focusing on how you can grow that, how you can preserve the integrity of what that means, but also scale it, which is a really easy thing to say and a really hard thing to do. And it's been, fantastic working with both of those partners, Berner and Be Real. are really behind the brand. They're the driving factor behind these brands. They test every genetic. They're involved every single day. And we just kind of behind the scenes do some of the blocking and tackling to help them grow their brands.
Right.
That's beneficial for all of us and the cannabis community as a whole.
Yeah. And I think it's so important and often undervalued as folks in the cannabis industry think about brand, right? And that authenticity factor. I mean, as you and I have chatted about before, you've seen, some of the most famous musicians and artists today try to launch these cannabis brands that, you naturally would think they have much larger embedded audiences and followings, but they fall flat because that, authenticity isn't there. And I think that's, again, what has resonated with end consumers for both the cookies and the Dr. Green Thumbs products.
I think so. And the fact that there's a reason why they're involved. In fact, the brands exist because they were involved in cannabis, not the other way around, right? Burner and Be Real were in cannabis long before plenty of us were born. And now they've built a brand. The brand built itself because of what they meant to the industry. And now I think that what they mean to the industry is bigger than themselves, which I think is an important thing to note. Like, at some point, it becomes more about the message than the messenger. And that's truly a testament to how important the messenger was to begin with, because the messenger can create a message that then permeates even when they're not the one speaking. Yeah. And that's things about how important it is to recognize where this industry started and what people brought and what people sacrificed to get here. I don't know, there's much bigger celebrities in the world, and some of them have been able to, do celebrity backed brands in a lot of different spaces. But I think the cannabis consumer is a little bit more discerning. Maybe they're a little bit cynical. I'm not saying we all wear tinfoil hats, but it's thought provoking. And I think that people are somewhat anti-establishment. And so what might work for makeup or might work for shirts, I don't think is going to work with the cannabis consumer, because it's not about, does it look cool? It's about, do you understand what a terpene is? Do you understand what flavors are? Do you understand the desired effect? And are you doing it for the right reasons? And I think the last piece is one that a lot of people forget is, are you doing this because you view it from a pure capitalistic standpoint, or are you doing this because you actually believe in the plant and the people that have been driving it and the people that it can help? So I think there are celebrities that can transition, but you've seen a lot fail because they don't have, people can see through and just realize that they're slapping their name on something. It doesn't work with cannabis consumers. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's a really great point you bring up about how music in general has really moved this movement forward. And, I've talked a lot about how Ben Harper's song Burn One Down was really one of the first times that I kind of really started to reconsider the things I'd been taught, growing up. I was born in 89, right? So that was this kind of thing it brings up a lot of really good points, right? And I'm curious, did you specifically seek out a first few brands that were tied to music, or that just naturally was where a lot of the, best legacy business started? That's a good question. We did not specifically seek out because of the music industry. And I should note, in the case of cookies, we didn't really seek them out. We kind of had a mutual friend that introduced us, and we went and met, and this was a while ago. I mean, Cookies was one store, and we had a license or two, and we kind of realized that a lot of the things we did were things that they needed, and the things that they did were things that we needed. And so it really was a marriage of opportunities and the ability to, it's wow, you guys are amazing where we're really weak, and we're pretty dang good at where you guys don't have the capacity. And so we've been able to scale that together. It honestly wasn't because of music that came together. And I would say that with Be Real and Cypress Hill, it wasn't because of music. Now, I would then maybe try and double click and say, because of music, it gave Cypress Hill the platform to become what they mean. So I guess in a roundabout way, if Cypress Hill hadn't existed, we might not have ended up working with Be Real, because Be Real and Kenji, who's been growing with Be Real forever, Insane is his line of genetics. And, Kenji's the guy who taught everybody how to grow. I mean, literally growing in garages and hydro in the 90s when there was no playbook, and figured it out. And all the guys that today, they learned from a guy who learned from a guy who learned from Kenji. And, I think that's music gave them a platform, and music has always been closely tied to progressive movement. It's been tied to, whether cannabis for a long, long time. I mean, the Grateful Dead, now Dead and Company, who ironically today announced their last tour is this summer. So, and I think in a lot of ways, that was kind of coming from the 60s all the way through and different bands and music kind of push that in LA. And that's probably why California legalized or decriminalized kind of in the late 90s versus some of the other places that took a lot longer, because you had these cultural meccas, and music, arts, culture all generally kind of go together. Mm-hmm. So I would say that, music probably plays a much bigger role than many of us realize, but there wasn't anything like, we need to go out and find partnerships with music celebrities. Like that wasn't ever part of it. It's just, they have wonderful brands and they mean a lot to the cannabis community. And I think most guys that would approach them would be looking and saying, we want to capitalize on what you have and help make it ours. And that's where we're a little bit different. We are not cookies. We are not Dr. Green Thumb. They are big, bad brands that are run by amazingly talented people that mean more to the cannabis community than you and I ever will. We give them an opportunity to help scale and accelerate that growth. And I'm never going to try and be who they are or pretend that we've done even a quarter for the culture than they have, because we haven't, and we don't have the capacity, because we weren't doing this in 1991. We weren't doing it in 2001. So, they've been great partners.
That's awesome. That's great. So tell me now, what do you think as you are scoping out new sites for cannabis dispensaries? What are some of the desirable characteristics you look for before opening a new one?
I think it's going to be a handful of things, and every market's going to be a little bit different. State regulations are incredibly nuanced. And, I say this all the time. One state expressly prohibits the same thing that the next state over expressly requires. And managing that is difficult. Some states it's a state process, some it's a local process. Some you can go anywhere, some you can go hardly anywhere. What I would say, and then some states are medical, some are recreational. I think inherently we view cannabis as health and wellness, whether it's recreational or medicinal, it's health and wellness. If you're a cancer patient or you have a neurological disorder, MS or seizures, everybody calls it medical. But, if you have 3 kids and you had a long day from work and you were trying to sleep, is that recreational? It feels kind of medical to me. I mean, if it was an Ambien or melatonin, nobody thinks that it's recreational, but so inherently we think it's all health and wellness. But from a market demographic, you're gonna plot things a little bit differently. I think recreational markets, you're gonna look for things like heavy street traffic, whether that's foot traffic or car traffic. And you might look more towards entertainment, dining, lifestyle. Versus if you're purely a medical market, you might skew more towards either convenience, like right off a freeway corner location, like think of every Rite Aid or CVS in the state of Florida. And then, I think that there's some blend of the two. And so for us, using Florida as an example, our first location is pretty close to a freeway off-ramp on a major east-west. If you went to the east, it's Coral Gables, which is a very high-end community. If you went to the west, it's like the old Cuban neighborhood where everybody's abuela lived. And it's kind of the heart and soul of old Miami. And we're right in between. And it happens to be right by a Target and Best Buy anchored shopping center with a McDonald's. So it kind of was a unicorn in that way. And we think that that'll play really well in medical market because it's convenient. There's a lot of population. But if Florida goes rec, it would play very well in that too. I think a place like Miami Beach is more of a recreational market. It's a lot of foot traffic, but there's not a lot of locals. And if it's a medical market, you have to have a medical license.
Good point.
you're not a resident. You're not in Miami Beach. So you kind of think that through. From a footprint, I think ultimately, you're going to look at, you want to make sure there's lots of parking. People don't want to wait. You want to make sure that it's big enough that you can have enough inventory to keep it stocked. People don't want to show up and have no product, and you want to be able to get people in and out. But we have stores that have a footprint as small as 1,000 square feet, maybe more like a little bit more, and as big as 6,000 square feet and everything between.
Gotcha. Very helpful. And so, obviously the last couple of quarters, we've seen an economic contraction, you've seen inflation. It's obviously been a tough comp year over year without the stimulus checks. And so I'm curious, how have you seen all of those factors impacting the trends at your retail locations, right? Be it, change in SKU or, so some of those kind of things. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the last year has been interesting in the cannabis space, and that you had a lot of stimulus money that, one, cannabis was deemed an essential use. And so cannabis was able to stay open when everybody was stuck at home. And then you had government stimulus, gas was basically free and people weren't going anywhere. And then the world started to open back up, and people started spending dollars on things other than cannabis, because you could go to a bar, you could go to a restaurant, you could travel. And now you've kind of got the double whammy of, well, I guess it's a triple whammy of people are out and doing things, so they have more choices of where to spend their dollars. Two, they have less dollars because there's no government stimulus. And three, you've got inflationary pressures, and people are now having to choose between gas, milk, and cannabis. And cannabis for a lot of people is not something that they're going to walk away from. It's not like people are going to say, I'll take the seizures back because they're not going to do that. But I think what you do see is you see a migration to value. And we try to work with brands that have brand equity and sit in the premium, not ultra premium, but very high quality genetics that are lower yielding, might be more finicky, but create a very desirable effect, right? And so that's going to skew towards the upper side of the price spectrum. I think that in general, you've seen a flooding of the markets. There's just a lot of products. So you've seen this, price on the wholesale side has come down, price on the retail side has come down. But we haven't got enough regulatory relief. I think that one of the shames, particularly in California, but some of the other markets, is, the tax rates that are applied to regulated businesses make it so that you can provide or get the same product in the non-regulated market for about half the price. And that is getting narrower, but it's not fair to legacy operators or to regulated operators to create that discrepancy, because there's weird, idiosyncrasies that it creates in terms of arbitrage of where product goes. I think that from a business standpoint, what we've tried to focus on is maintaining that if you want a really high quality experience, you want to come to a TRP store. And that's because we're going to have an exclusive menu that's well curated. And that's going to, in a cookie store, it's going to have all of the cookies menu, which is some of the best genetics in the world. But it's also going to have our 10, 20 closest friends. There's a lot of great cultivators and guys that we respect in California that don't have the capacity to fill every shelf. It's small batch. It's, things like Doja, things like Wizard Tree, Smokers LA, Nature's Lab, Blueprint, guys creating great genetics that maybe are even lesser known. We're going to have that experience that you're going to only find at our stores. That's going to exist. But we also want to make sure that the rest of our menu, if you just want, something cheap because you're choosing between gas, milk, and cannabis, we want to have that too. And I think that the choices that we are creating and will continue to create is we want to create value at every kind of price point. And it's not a matter of, we bought a bunch of cheap boof weed and we're going to sell it for $15. Our stores and our product line in our stores is, you're probably going to get a product that tastes and gives you the effects of a $30 eighth, and it's $20. And, our high-end stuff, our goal is to make it so that we're always outperforming the category. And it's always easy because some of the genetics that make this stuff really unique also make it really expensive to grow. Like cereal milk, as an example. there's just no way to get high yields on cereal milk. It doesn't really exist. Like, and it veges for like 3-4 weeks. The loss rate, it's just tough. Are you going to grow that if you know, people aren't going to pay the premium? Maybe, maybe not. But I think we want to make sure that the stores and our customers know that we're going to meet you where you are. And that is, we're going to give you the best quality for the price that you want to pay all along the chain. And that's important to us.
Interesting. Yeah. You know, someone else in the industry I was chatting with recently kind of compared what they're seeing with flower to almost like what you have in the wine market, right? Where you have the vast majority of people who want good quality but cheap stuff. And I think as cannabis markets mature, you see that high quality stuff is coming down in price point. But then you also have the kind of ultra high end consumer who wants just the highest quality product. And I'd be curious if you would agree with that view, or how your views are on kind of the development of flower overall.
I think that it's one of the better comps in the marketplace of flower to wine for a couple of different reasons. And it's funny you bring that up. Is much like wine, cannabis is not really a commodity, because there's different types of grapes and there's different types of genetics. But I can take the same grape and grow it on the same hill and bottle it in the same way, but yet the 2013 vintage is a 98 point wine and the 2014 is a 92. Why? I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know. When it comes to cannabis, I can take the same genetic from the same mom, run it in the same room, the same environmental controls that we control down to 0.2% on the humidity side, and I can have a 10 out of 10 batch, and the next time I can have an 8 out of 10 batch. There's just an element of there's no way to completely eliminate the variables. And I think that's what's kind of exciting about like cannabis and how you can have amazing genetics and other things. And then sometimes you get a batch and you're just like, wow, this is incredible. I think the other thing too, is you talk about ultra premium versus value. Certainly in wine, you know, it's $2 Chuck, it's Franzia, you know, you've got kind of the low end stuff, and then you've got ultra premium and then premium. I don't know if there's ultra premium in cannabis. Like there's no $5,000 bottle of wine equivalent in the cannabis space. But that doesn't mean that we won't eventually. We're going to continue to evolve as an industry. We might find something that, you know, grows 0.25 pounds of light, but is the best thing ever. And maybe that exists. And all of a sudden there is something that justifies $150 an eighth. I don't know. I think where there's a little bit of a differentiation though is the durability. Wine ages the longer it ages, the better wine is, generally speaking, for fine wines. Not so much with cannabis, right? There's a 2 to 3 week window where it's actually getting better, moisture content's dropping, THC's going up, right? And rarely are you getting that package in your hands while it's still going up. Usually by the time you get it, it's a depreciating asset if you sit on it for more than, a couple of weeks. And so that's something that is where I would actually break that correlation, because it isn't the perfect. It's not like I can go buy an eighth of Gary Payton and sit on it for 12 years and now it's a 2020 vintage and it's worth 4 times as much. It's pretty much just boof. So, it's a good correlation, but cannabis has nuances. It's a non-durable good that also has, the elements of wine, like we mentioned, and the batches are all different. You got to know it. You got to try it to really see what your thoughts are.
Yep. Wow. Thanks. That's great insight. And so what do you think about overall retail versus delivery trends for the industry?
So we don't do delivery. I think that consumers in America in general love delivery, and COVID did more to advance delivery than anything in history. Actually, there was some crazy stat I remember seeing that in the first 25 years of the internet, like it got from 0 to like 13% of all transactions were online. And in the first like 30 days of COVID, it went to like 37%, like some crazy stat. And a lot of that's D2C. I mean, clearly Amazon, but you've got, Uber Eats, DoorDash, all the things that just, I mean, I can order an iPhone and they'll deliver it to you. Cannabis is a little unique, and it's regulatory is the problem. I think that consumers would love to sit at home and have product delivered, but think about the logistics of delivery. And I'll use California as an example because it's particularly challenged. In California, you can only have a certain amount of product in a vehicle at a time. And I think it's 3,000 that is for a specific order that's already been placed, and 2,000 that is unallocated that you could bag while you're on the road. And I might have those reversed. But that also means that someone is driving around with $5,000 worth of product in their car, which is a security issue. You can't accept cash, or you can't accept credit card, which now that means that no matter what, that delivery vehicle has $5,000 worth of assets in it. Even if there's only $100 left of cannabis, that means they have $4,900 of cash. You're doing scheduled delivery because you have to make sure that people, that you're confirming their identity, looking at their driver's license. In some cases, making sure that they aren't exceeding their limits, their monthly limits, if that exists in that jurisdiction. And so your transactions that you can get to is maybe 1 or 2 an hour on a good day. And to make delivery more viable, particularly with where gas prices are, with where insurance is for cannabis vehicles, doesn't really exist, you need to be at like 4 or 5 deliveries per hour. Now, I think that if the regulations change, then I think delivery is a great avenue from a customer fulfillment, customer satisfaction perspective. Everybody loves to sit at home and have something delivered. But I think Drizzly is probably the best comparable. Mm-hmm. And Drizzly was bought by Uber maybe 2 years ago or something like that. And, you know, I can count on one hand the number of times I've used it. It's pretty cool, but like probably just go to the grocery store and buy some beer if I'm going to watch a football game. Like, I'm not going to Drizzly it. I think cannabis will get there too. And I think Drizzly will too, but Drizzly, because of you have to check the ID, they got to hand it to you in person. They can at least take your credit card up front, but it's a little bit difficult. So if you can get to large scale in terms of demand aggregation, I think that rather than if you can do scheduled delivery, I think that that's probably where most successes are going to be found in this industry, again, state by state, because you can logistically plan things out and maximize your uptime versus your downtime. And other guys have mastered the ice cream truck model, which is pretty unique. And it basically means I've got cars kind of circling in an area, and then you can use geotargeting and geofencing so that if you put in an order, it can only order what is already in the car in your area. That also works. For us, we'll be in the state of California, we'll be within 30 minutes of about 90% of the population within the next 6 to 12 months. We're probably within an hour of 90% of the population today. So we have a footprint to create that ultimate, last mile delivery to consumers that I think it will be second to none. And we have delivery licenses in most of them, and we can turn that on. But I actually don't see a way where you can do that in a way that A, cannabis customers want right now, and B, can be done without losing money. Yeah, I would be happy to be wrong. And if any viewers want to tell me how to do it right, I'm happy to, we are all ears, but we haven't found the system yet. I also think one other thing to note is with customers, we talked about how cannabis is like wine and every batch is unique. People like to look at it. They want to see it. They want to smell it. They want to, now eventually you know what you want, and maybe you just reorder that. And that's where it becomes a lot easier. So no question, 30 years from now, it'll be a huge part of the industry. I think beverage will be a huge part of the industry, but it's a very small part of the industry today.
Yeah, makes sense. Yep. And how do you think about potential increased competition in the places where you have locations today, as we see states and municipalities issue more licenses over time typically?
I look at it through 2 lenses. If you're a believer in what the industry should be about, which is patient and customer access, we are hugely supportive of any market that wants to open up and offer more licenses. We're big believers in home grow. We want every single customer to have the opportunity to get easy, affordable access to medicine and or their recreational benefits. Period. Hard stop. That's all we care about. With that said, if you looked at it through the lens of increased competition, we aren't scared. I think that the myth, and we talk to folks all the time who say things like, we only want to invest in the East Coast markets that are more protected. And I my answer is always, why? Because it's a depreciation, that regulatory moat that exists in those markets is a depreciating asset. It is going away over time. Now, some states might hang on to it forever, but on a long-term basis, every state is going to look more like California and Colorado than it does like Illinois, New York, and Florida. Like it has to. And so for me, we've duked it out in the knife fight markets of California and the West Coast markets where you have high quality product from a lot of different people. I mean, I rattled off earlier 10 guys in California that we respect the hell out of, that we don't have, we know them, we sell them in our stores, we partner with them, but I don't have any economic interest in their success. We just respect them. And we know that they can deliver a good job, and that's friendly competition that makes us better. Competition breeds improvement, and that has elevated the cannabis game in these markets. And that's probably why you have much better aggregate product consistency, quality in those markets than you do in some of the more markets. But, look, New York is going to open up and there's going to be a lot of stores. I don't think it's going to be super protected or insulated like some of the other markets. And I think that some guys are going to be in for a rude awakening of what it takes to actually deliver a customer experience and a product to a customer that they want and will come back for. Because it's really hard. And there's a lot of people that have survived and thrived on the basis of we're the only ones here, so that's where you're going to buy it from. And I should make no mistake, like, that's awesome for them. Like, I'm not faulting that. Like, hey, you've got the license and the world is still capitalistic, and, do your thing. I hope that you can improve and get better and do right by patients, but I'm not faulting people for making money. But I do think that that's going to be a harder thing to hide behind in a world in which every market is loosening up. I mean, Illinois is going to add another 200 dispensaries over the next 12 to 18 months. And I think that's good for patients. It's good for consumers. And I do actually think on a long-term basis, it's good for the businesses that are there, because
totally.
It will force us to get better at what we do.
Yeah. And I think that's right. And it's the, bit of an oxymoron, I guess, in the sense of investing in the industry, right? Where obviously you want what's best for the consumer, which is typically more competition. But then from an investment standpoint, less licenses obviously provides more barriers to entry for competition. But I think you're spot on about, needing to, over time, you're going to have competition one way or the other. So even these operators who've had the benefit in these limited license markets are going to need to improve. Now, I think the counter argument those folks focusing on the limited license states would say is that in the interim period, in those first several years, you get the benefit of huge profits, because prices is so high. You can smartly, hopefully, reinvest that capital into finding the right operators and bringing down your cost down and growing rapidly in this specific time period when capital is so scarce in the industry.
That's a really good point. And I agree with you. I think that we want to be in all those states too. And you're right. There's a discounted cash flow associated with, being one of the few people at the dance until there's more people at the dance. And I think that gives a huge head start in terms of brand equity in those states and in terms of infrastructure. That's something that is hard to replace. And I think that most of the MSOs that are the big boys are run by really talented, smart people, and they're seeing the playing field probably like we are. We just kind of chase it from the other end. But I think that they see it, and our customer and our belief is, we don't really view ourselves as directly competitive to a lot of the big MSOs. And I would say that we are trying to sit in kind of that, premium at every price point category versus, cheaper or available everywhere, like the most stores. So, I don't think that, $2 Chuck feels super threatened by $500 French Burgundies, right? I just don't think I'm not saying it's that big of a delta, but there's a stratification of the market. And I think that where we sit, we offer something that's a little bit unique, that isn't super competitive or insulated to them.
Right.
I think that in general, there's a huge opportunity for cannabis, right? It's a 25 billion a year industry that should be a 250 billion a year industry. So in a lot of ways, the better our competitors do, the better we all do, because you're growing the industry as a whole. And so we're supportive of that. I think that there's different ways to achieve the same goal, and there's different end goals for everybody. Some want to be 7-Eleven and some want to be Supreme, right? Like Supreme has 19 stores and 7-Eleven has 50,000 stores. Which one's a more valuable company? I mean, certainly 7-Eleven is worth more, but on a per store basis, so there's just different ways to approach it and look at it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think clearly with your recent entrance into Florida, obviously we got some stiff competition from existing players like Trulieve there, but certainly not worried about facing those more established players, especially just I think given the overall size of that market, especially as we see some switch over to adult use hopefully here in the near term.
There's a ballot initiative for 2024. I've been asked by a handful of people what our opinions are on it, and it's a little nuanced. Florida has a ballot requirement that you can only have a single action. So if you created a ballot initiative that said we are legalizing recreational cannabis and we are allowing home grow, it'll get thrown out by the courts. It'll never make it to the ballot. And I think that that's a hard thing to explain to the general population, because home grow is something that's really important there. But there's no way to get to home grow if you don't get to recreational first. And there's no way to do both at the same time because it's banned by the Florida legislature. So I think it's a matter of, can you get recreational approved? Then can you get home grow approved? Then, you gotta, and you can't let perfect get in the way of progress. And that's hard to say. And I've said it earlier in this podcast, like, we are absolutely about greater opportunities for people to have access to medicine. We are pro home grow. We are pro choice in terms of having multiple options and competitive environments. But in the case of the Florida ballot initiative that's going forward, we strongly support it in that we think it creates opportunities for more people to have access. And it's the first step towards the next step, which people want it to be home grow. On the flip side, I will say this, Florida regulators have been great to work with, and there's a real effort on their part to make the program better for patients. And I know that that's somewhat controversial. There's people want different things, they don't like the caps and all that stuff. And I get that, but Florida started, it's a right of center legislature, and it started with no inhalables, no ingestibles, no smokable flower. And over the course of 6 years, it's grown into a fairly robust program. I mean, it has all of, you can do generally everything. They allow BHO, they allow flower. It's a medical program, but there's a ton of qualifying conditions. It's not hard. They've evolved. It used to take 30 days to get a card. Now you can get it in 5 minutes. That is progressive. And I don't want to, we are happy and we with where the program's at. I think that we want it to progress, and access for more patients and competition is great. But I also do want to give some credit to the regulators there who have done a pretty good job of moving it, maybe not at the pace people want and maybe not in the exact way, but it's a fairly progressive medical program for a right of center state. So, we're excited about it. We launched our first store there, and it's been a big success. I think the patients enjoy the quality of our products, and we'll be opening probably 2 handfuls more stores over the next 18 months there. So
that's great. And, it's interesting you talk about kind of the whole having to not let perfect be the enemy of good. And I think you're seeing those exact same dynamics play out at the federal level, right? Where I think a lot of the Dems like Booker were really trying to, get it all done in one fell swoop. And I certainly would love that. I frankly think that there's a lot more that could be done faster at the federal level, but at the same time, if it's not going to happen, then let's at least make some progress. And that's, I think, what we're kind of hopefully seeing play out with safe banking, where I think folks are, it sounds like, and, knock on wood, because with the cannabis industry, you never really know, but it sounds like there may actually be at least some agreement coming for us in the lame duck session. So even if it's not the speed and the scale that we want, at least
we're getting change in the right direction.
Let's hope. I mean, I watched the debate 2 years ago where the vice president said, we will legalize cannabis in this country and we will release people from prison. And I'm hoping that they live up to that. The actual crime is that people are in jail for doing what I do and you do every day and have been in jail for a long time. That's the crime that we should all be trying to fix. That's people's lives. You can't give people their lives back. I had the chance to meet with Richard DeLisi, who was the longest incarcerated person for a nonviolent cannabis crime. And we made him our first patient in Florida. He was recently released from prison, thanks to the help of a lot of people from the Last Prisoner Project and a lot of smarter, more powerful, more dedicated people than I am, and got him out. And, I remember talking to him, and he was talking about how his whole family died while he was in prison because he spent 30 some odd years. It's like some of his children had passed away. Like you can't replace somebody's life. And so we need to fix that. Mm-hmm. And I think the secondary component on the safe banking aspect, and you've seen, Cory Booker has really been trying to push for the social justice tied into the cannabis reform. I actually think that they are hurting the people they're trying to help more than they are, more than they realize at this point, because the big boys have access or workarounds to the problems, namely capital markets, vendors work with them, banking, and we sit kind of somewhere in between. We don't have access to big bond deals like the publicly traded companies, but we also do have access. We are institutionally backed, and we have private equity investors. The small guy has no ability to launch a business. You can't go to the SBA and get a loan, and private parties aren't lending to one-off dispensaries. It's really challenging. And so I think we need to create safe banking in order to actually help the social equity movement move forward. And I also think that there's safety issues. I mean, the cost, you've got security at every store to protect your staff, but it's because you've got valuable product and you've got valuable cash on hand. Everybody knows. And that's a difficult thing to deal with. I mean, I think in Washington, there was a couple of people that were killed, and it's happened in a handful of places. Like, we need to eliminate that for general public safety. And secondarily, if you are trying to transition non-regulated into regulated, you have to reduce the regulatory load, because people are going backwards right now. More people are leaving the regulated space and going back to the traditional market than the other way around, because there's no taxes. And it's not just taxes, it's the compliance and regulatory just to stay on top of it so that you don't get a $100,000 fine because you mislabeled a SKU. It's, if we could cut the taxes and the regulatory, we could cut the price of our cannabis by half in the regulated market instantly, basically. And so I think that's where federal comes into play, because it'll actually allow you to, it sounds counterintuitive, but the more you can legalize it, the more you can actually then control and create the trajectory of what you want with the program at a national level. So, and I think personally, safe banking they'll probably defer to some sort of federalist system where they're going to still allow states to determine what they want, but at least we'll give them the opportunity.
Yeah. That's great. Brandon, how about with regards to your growth plans and looking for new social equity partners? Are there ways that people who maybe would qualify for social equity for new licenses in markets that you're looking to expand for? And if so, is there some way that they can reach out to you?
I think the answer is absolutely. And I'll take it one step further. When we're going into new markets, we're constantly looking to find local partners who can help us grow and understand the market. And some of those are areas that require social equity, some aren't. But we do try and, we'll do social equity by choice in a lot of circumstances, because we want people who are part of the community to be a part of our store, because that's important to our brand ethos and what we're about. And so I can get you some contact info, and maybe you can post it on your website.
Yeah, totally.
You can reach out to us. And then secondarily, even outside of that, if somebody's an existing social equity applicant or want a license and just is looking for some advice, we're happy to kind of help folks along the way that need it. I'm not saying that we have all the answers, because we're all still kind of figuring this out. When I go to a new state, we're just as blind as most, but I've done it a handful of times. And if we can use our experience to help people who maybe haven't done it and are deserving or need it, like, we're all ears. So, reach out to us in any way, because we want to be a good steward for meeting people. As we talked about at the very beginning, we want to be the halfway point between the evil banker side of cannabis and the legacy trapper side of the business, and do right by both at the same time. And so if we can help people navigate that, we're all ears, and we've done it a few times, and we also want to learn from them. They know markets a hell of a lot better than we do. So it's been a very rewarding relationship in most of the cases where we've done it. So
awesome.
Feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Well, we'll plan to include the contact info in the show notes for the podcast and on YouTube as well. Brandon, thank you so much for the time this afternoon. I learned so much, as I do every time I chat with you. So thank you again for joining the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. I appreciate it. And thanks for all the support.
Absolutely. Have a great weekend.
See you guys. Bye.